oral questions. Question orale, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Today, we found out that there are about 100 police investigations ongoing, investigations into foreign interference. One of these deals with Beijing's targeted intimidation of a member of this House. We have also found out that the National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister had been aware of that intimidation for a long time. This is a conflict of interest. Will the Prime Minister launch a genuine public independent inquiry? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I asked the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs to work with all the parties, to work with experts in order to develop a plan so that we can move forward and continue the good work which was done by Mr. Johnston. We now need to move to the next step. We are here, will continue to be here to work collaboratively with all those who want to take this issue seriously, who want to work seriously, set partisanship aside, set toxicity aside, and to work constructively to truly deal with foreign interference.
For months, the Prime Minister has tried to cover up Beijing's interference in our democracy. He's denied, he's changed his story, and he's hired as many members of the Trudeau Foundation as will accept the job to try and help him with that cover-up. Now that David Johnston has done what this House called on him to do and resigned from the made-up position that the Prime Minister gave him for $1,500 a day, will the Prime Minister do what this House has called on him to do 3 times and call a public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I think the Prime Minister was clear in response to a previous question today. Our government is looking to collaborate in a constructive way with opposition parties, to hear from experts and other professionals in this space to design precisely those next steps forward, since Mr. Johnston has decided to leave his position as Special Rapporteur. And we think that Canadians would benefit from a collaborative conversation, one that we've always been inclined to have. We found it difficult on the other side, Mr. Speaker, to find a willing partner, but we're more encouraged this week than we were a week ago.
The Honourable Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands and Rideau Lakes.
Canadians haven't been encouraged by the inaction by this government. We heard today at committee that the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs knew for 2 years that members of this House were being targeted for intimidation by foreign state actors like the dictatorship in Beijing. And what did this government do? Absolutely nothing. It's not a comedy of errors, it's a tragedy of errors with this government. Opposition parties have 3 times called for the government to have a public inquiry and have been ready to collaborate the entire time. Will the government now make up for lost time and the wasted months on this issue and finally call a transparent public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I was surprised to hear a Conservative member speak about inaction on this file, because that's exactly what the Leader of the Opposition did for 2 years when he was Minister responsible for democratic institutions. Our government is the first government to take concrete steps to counter foreign interference in the democratic institutions. We've strengthened these measures time and time again, and now we're looking forward again to hearing constructive suggestions from the opposition about how we can work together to further strengthen these measures. That's always been our approach, and we'll continue to do that.
The Honourable Member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, here we are. This government has been deflecting and dodging for 3 months on this issue. Canadians have not been duped. No public inquiry, no truth, and no responsibility shown by this government. Now, with David Johnston's resignation, the government has only one option: an open and independent inquiry. Canadians support it, the majority of this House supports it, and even their very own Liberal minister declared that it was never off the table. When will this government call a public inquiry?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Well, there's one thing that the honourable member said across the way that I do agree with, which is that we continue to look at all options, including a public process, to shine a light on the way in which we are fighting foreign interference, Mr. Speaker. What's important now is that the Conservatives stop with the partisan attacks, roll up their sleeves, get down to work so that we can better protect our democratic institutions. That is work that the government has been committed to doing since day one. This is not a partisan issue. We need to work together to overcome the challenges of foreign interference.
Honourable member for Brantford Brant.
Mr. Speaker, this whole government is about partisanship. From day one, the Prime Minister has had zero interest in letting Canadians learn the truth. He refused to tell us what he knew and why he did nothing about it. He selfishly used David Johnston to delay the process and cool the air around the issue. Now that Mr. Johnston has resigned, it's time for the Prime Minister to do what Canadians are asking. And while he laughs at me, I will ask him the question: when will he call a public inquiry right here, right now?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, when I was in opposition, I was a critic for public safety. We asked for information on national security. We asked to be able to see into every corner of government. The minister at that time, who's now the leader of the official opposition, said no. Said no to an independent group of parliamentarians who could look into every aspect of national security. We said yes. So the members opposite had an opportunity using NSI COP. They then had an opportunity offered by the Prime Minister for the leader of the opposition to get a briefing. Also said no. They have another opportunity now to collaborate and to stop being so partisan and to put the national interest first and participate, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable member, l'Honourable député de Mégantic-L'Érable.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. This morning, we found out that the RCMP has launched 100 investigations into intimidation. So over 100 Canadians have possibly been intimidated by a foreign regime. A true leader, Mr. Speaker, makes decisions and takes responsibility for them. But this Prime Minister doesn't do either of those things. He doesn't make important decisions on his own. That's why he chose a special rapporteur. That's why he is having his friend, the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, try to waffle and avoid an independent public inquiry. It's time to finally call a public independent commission of inquiry, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Public Safety Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would like to express my gratitude to the RCMP Commissioner who briefed the committee earlier today. The evidence, the proof of these investigations, which have been handled by the RCMP, are tangible proof of our fight against foreign interference. We need Conservatives to stop with their squabbles and picking fights, stop the partisanship. We need them to do some serious work to help us better protect our democratic institutions. The Honourable Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. 4 days ago, the Special Rapporteur announced his resignation, but he's still working on submitting his final report, even though the report has already lost all credibility. The Prime Minister has opted for partisanship, rejecting 3 requests from a majority of MPs in this House to call an independent public inquiry. The Prime Minister also chose a friend and member of the Trudeau Foundation, who he then literally threw under the bus instead of himself, to prevent Canadians from finding out the whole truth. When will the Prime Minister launch an independent public inquiry so that we can get to the bottom of everything related to Beijing's interference? The Honourable Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. Mr. Speaker, it's a bit rich, isn't it, that the Conservatives are bringing up partisanship in their questions? The Conservatives are the ones who decided to turn this matter, the important matter of protection of democratic institutions and foreign interference, into a partisan matter. And moreover, Mr. Speaker, when they were in government, they did nothing to combat this interference, which has been a threat and was a threat during the years they were in office. We have taken action, we will continue to take action, and we hope that they will work with us. Mr. Speaker, the Special Rapporteur's resignation, he was named by the Prime Minister, but this resignation could be a milestone, a real turning point in launching a public, independent commission of inquiry. The Minister for Intergovernmental Affairs showed some signs of openness, which I welcome, but I'm also cautious about it. So here's my question for the Prime Minister. Does he agree with me that the necessary condition in order to end up with a positive result to this situation would be to call a public, independent commission of inquiry?
Premier Ministre.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister. I thank the leader of the Bloc Québécois for having submitted very interesting prospective candidates. We are very open to looking at those candidates as possibilities, and we're also open to working collaboratively, cooperatively on a process that will have the trust and confidence of this House and of Canadians. The issue of foreign interference is way too important to be partisan about it or to be engaging in personal attacks. We will be objective and hardworking. We will take this seriously. We will carry on with the work that's already underway, and we will restore the trust of Canadians in our electoral system and in our democracy. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, I have to come back to this. We need to agree on a basic principle, the principle of a commission of inquiry and appointing the leader of that commission of inquiry. And the leader must be independent from the government, totally independent, in order to be able to do his or her work. And if we agree on that basic principle, then and only then can we move forward to select a candidate. And if the Prime Minister would like to discuss candidates with me, I can be reached at any time for this. But we need to solve this clearly, officially, before the end of the session. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we do agree on the fact that we need to move forward quickly and in the right way. I'm very open to having discussions with opposition parties. Unfortunately, though, over the course of the past few months, there's been a high degree of toxicity, partisanship, and personal attacks. It's been very unfortunate. I'm happy to hear that people are now open to working seriously on on interference. And we are happy to carry on ongoing work in order to protect our democracy, our institutions, and our electoral system. Mr. Speaker, the Bloc Québécois is working as a team, cooperating to ensure that a public inquiry into Chinese interference is finally launched. We have submitted names of prospective commissioners in order to facilitate consensus and to ensure that the government finally launches the inquiry before we rise for the summer. But the ball is in the government's court. Of course, no one will take on the commissioner role blindly after the trap the government set for David Johnston. That's why the government needs to announce two things. First, that it is launching a public and independent commission of inquiry, and second, that its commissioner will be able to define its terms of reference. When will the government finally reveal its intentions? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, as the Prime Minister said a few moments ago, we appreciate the suggestions we have received from the Bloc Québécois. The potential commissioners they have suggested are excellent candidates, credible individuals. This is a good start to a substantive discussion. We share the Bloc Québécois' concerns when it comes to taking action swiftly, fast enough to not delay a public process. We look forward to working with the Bloc and with other political parties too, I hope, in order to select an individual or individuals who can lead the commission and choose the right terms of reference, and their suggestions are a great start. The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, no one in their right mind would accept such a position without being assured of their independence from the government. This is why the government must announce a genuine commission of inquiry and give its future commissioner the necessary leeway with regard to its terms of reference. At this point, not revealing these key details about a commission is the main obstacle to the inquiry process. And after almost 4 months of avoiding a public inquiry, interference is still taking place. It would be easier to conclude that the government is still trying to prevent a public inquiry. What's the government waiting for to reveal its intentions and tell the public the truth? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are not trying to block the process. On the contrary, we are seeking to work together. The letter we received from the leader of the Bloc Québécois is an important step for us, an important step in constructive discourse. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, NSI COP's work is ongoing. CSIS's work is ongoing as well. My colleague, the Minister for Public Safety, will have legislative action soon as well. We look forward to working collaboratively with the opposition. The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, we don't use public commissions of inquiry to look into easy issues. They exist precisely to deal with sensitive topics where the information is not accessible because those who have the information are either afraid or unwilling to cooperate. Now, of course, it's tricky. Of course, there will be times when the hearings are held behind closed doors. Commissions of inquiry are designed to deal with that. If it wasn't sensitive, we wouldn't need a public and independent commission of inquiry. But that's where we're at today. So when will the government finally announce the public and independent commission of inquiry? The Honourable Public Safety Minister. Mr. Speaker, I would like to start by thanking our Bloc colleagues for their suggestions. My colleague brought up some issues that we will have to make decisions on. For example, how to best protect our national security institutions. There will be challenges to navigate. We can do so through open, transparent discussions. There's another investment, which is another action. There's $49 million for the RCMP. That is one way, just one way, that we can better protect Canadians.